morning, good afternoon, good evening. Coffee round the table here for you, MDRT community. Thank you very much, Sean and Richard, for joining us this morning. We are so excited to have you with us. And of course, my partner in crime, Louis from Pro Life of UK, is also here with us, and he will be moderating the discussion this morning. We'd like to thank everybody who has joined us in the Zoom room and everybody else who will be watching this on YouTube and on our other social media platforms where we will be uploading and posting this video there. Let me first make the proper introduction. There we go. So Richard Dobson, who's a very, very dear friend of mine, is a career financial services executive on a mission to simplify communication in the industry. A frequent speaker and published author, Richard brings a wealth of knowledge to the table, and naming his books, we have Make Simplicity Your Superpower and The Trusted Professional. He recently shared communicating hacks every financial advisor should know at the 2024 MDRT annual meeting in Vancouver. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Janet. Hello, Louis and Sean. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Welcome to the meeting, Richard. So now let me introduce our second guest for this morning. His name is Sean Belfoy. He's a seasoned entrepreneur and dynamic leader in the financial services industry. He is based in Ottawa, Canada. Sean combines his entrepreneurial spirit with a deep commitment to mentorship and community impact. His dedication to the growth and development of the next generation of financial advisors, coupled with his active role in philanthropy and expert perspective via podcasts and webinars, showcases his multifaceted approach to success. With over 20 years of industry experience, Sean enjoys sharing his insights on navigating entrepreneurship in the financial world, inspiring others to achieve their own professional milestones. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, Sean Belfoy.
Hi, Sean.
Hello, Janet, and thank you, Louis. You pronounced my name perfectly. Wonderful. Great job. And hello, Richard.
Hey.
So
You are most welcome, sir.
what we are going to start off with is a short presentation of what you shared at the 2024 MDRT annual meeting. And why don't we start with you, Richard?
Oh, sure. Yeah, my topic is simplicity, and I got interested in it early on in my career, and I've developed and got from other, mostly MDRT members, ideas that they had used in their own practices, which of course is one of the huge benefits of going to the annual meeting and meeting others and exchanging those ideas. And so this was a collection over many years, and I always had this big file, of these ideas that many I put into practice. And some I came up with on my own, some my mentors contributed. And so it's kind of this little magic bag that I've got all these little hacks in that have worked so well in the past, and I share them with other reps because that's where I got them. I got them from other advisors, and so I love to share them with other advisors. And this is what we did at the annual meeting in the focus session. We talked about simplicity, but simplicity in action, or what I like to call applied simplistics. Okay, simplistics isn't really a word, but it is in this context because we're taking those simple thoughts and we're putting them into action. And so what I like to do is give those direct ideas. Here, this is how you do it. Now, people will want to make these their own and put their own spin on them. Yeah. But and as you know, I think you probably heard some of these. That I think our background, Janet, was started with the MDRT Foundation, I believe.
That's right.
And all the fundraising that we've done over the years and the phonathons. And so we had a lot of fun in those. We don't do those anymore, but the foundation's doing very well. And of course, we have lots of fond memories of that. But you asked me to show a few of these, and the first one I'll show is the ruler. And this is a carpenter's ruler, and you've probably seen these in maybe your dad's toolbox, or if you know a carpenter, they probably use these. This is a wooden ruler, and it folds up. This happens to be a meter stick, and a meter is 39 and 3/8 inches long, almost 40. So when I think of things in inches, but 40 inches and 40 years. So we work about 40-year career. And so this is a great proxy for our working career. Here's our 40 years represented by the 40 inches of this ruler. And so if we look at that, the problem is that if this is our working years, we don't start saving for retirement right away when we go to work, when we're young. In fact, in our early years, in our early working years, our largest single expense is usually educational costs, right? And they put it off. We all put that off, the savings. And then in our 30s, we're building. We're building careers, we're building businesses, building families, perhaps. The convenient time to save comes to no one. And we put it off even further, right? And so, and who wants to work 40 years? Our clients come in, they want to retire early, right? In some cases, they want to retire a lot early, and it's just not enough time for the account to grow. If they want that early retirement, they're going to have to start early, right? And if the early retirement's in the cards, they have to start back here. They can't put it off and then retire early. The ruler doesn't account for that. Retirement, the ruler says you can't do that. And there's only two ways to store money as we move toward retirement. We can own something, like a share of stock, right? And that owners usually get paid better on the average, right, over the years. Dr. Jeremy Siegel of the Wharton School did a study back to 1802. And it's a wonderful chart in his book called Stocks for the Long Run. And Dr. Siegel, I've spoken to him many times. I reproduced his chart in my book, gave me permission to do that. And of course, he's a very prestigious emeritus professor. And this chart says that $1 put in 1802 in large caps in North America grew to 1.7 million this year. $1. $1 put in bonds grew to $1,800 in the same period. 1.7 million, $1,800. Gold, T-bills, and the US dollar all below that as far as returns go. And so it's very important for our clients to understand that when they own, and if they can think they're going to profit, but it's on the average. And so it's like having a piece of ice in one hand and a burning ember in the other. On the average, you're supposed to be doing good, right?
It's true.
But you can't hang on. It's uncomfortable. Just like those stocks when they go like this. And if the client hears this from you, but the owners will, on the average, make 7%. Since World War II, that number's been over 11% in North America, large companies. Okay. And the only other way to store money is in a fixed rate. And so the return's going to be less, but it's going to be guaranteed, right? And so you can own something or you can loan your money. The only two ways to get a return on those funds. You can own or loan. Owners take risk, loaners get guarantees and assurances, but they make less. And a magnitude of order, they make less. And so it's an important concept. Of course, how does their plan measure up is my last question. And so the ruler is a lot of fun. It's a familiar item. It's something that you can have on your conference table in your office, and a client comes in and they say, well, what's this? Well, let me show you the ruler. And so you can pick it up and share that. So you're not only, it's a show and tell, and clients will remember this. And you have fun with it, right? I think Janet said we were going to have some fun, right?
That is indeed fun. It's actually a very unique way of simplifying, retirement in that case, because I think you focused on retirement when it comes to that presentation. It's a wonderful way of making it very relatable. And that's what people want. They want to relate to to the people that they speak with, especially to financial advisors like us, because some of us really tend to kind of complicate things, but that is just perfect. And it's my first time to actually hear it, Richard. I know that Janet has heard it several times, but that's something that we can really learn from. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. An inch is a cinch, a yard is hard. What a takeaway.
Yeah, and by the mile, it's a trial. That's the third part of
Wow. All right.
that.
Let's add that to the entire phrase or sentence. There you go. All right. Thanks a lot, Richard.
Absolutely.
Now let's go to Sean. Sean, you've been in this business for, as you mentioned, for over 2 decades now. And when we met at the annual meeting last June, you said that you had this shift from a more general approach when it comes to conducting the business into retirement as well. So how do you go about that with a client? In your country, in your practice, how do you go about it?
Yeah, for sure. Great question, Louis. And I just want to say, Richard, great presentation. It's the first time I've seen that actually as well, too. The art stick, I love it. I think I need to find myself one now. We have meter sticks here in Canada. I can find those everywhere, but I'm gonna have to find one of those foldable ones. So thank you for sharing that. And Louis, we had a great conversation in the registration area. That's where we first met, and I had the pleasure to speak with you and share some stories with you. And really the big change in my business came during the pandemic. So to explain how it's changed, I want to kind of go back a little bit and just talk to you about what it looked like before, and I think that'll set the table to kind of see how it changed. So before the pandemic, so let's say 2019, we were a business with 4 people, and we were growing. We were making money. Our financial center was happy with us. We were doing great things, but there was just something that in my mind there just was not fulfillment and there was not happiness. I don't think that I felt the purpose that I had felt at the start of my career, and we were running and just not time to really work on our business or contemplate what was not making me or our team satisfied. And then, of course, the world changed, right? March of 2020 gave us time for reflection and stand back and say, okay, what's going on? What are we doing? Why am I doing this, right? I think a lot of people had time to reflect on what's important to them and what makes them happy. So my practice was a general practice. We feel like every time we met with somebody, we're reinventing the wheel. We're talking to them about retirement planning or a young family and insurance or some transactional stuff, saving for people's education. And the list could go on and on and on and on. And just felt we weren't getting any traction. So when the pandemic happened and we were sitting at home thinking, what did we want to do to change that? I started thinking of what would my ideal practice look like? Who are the people that I really enjoy working with in our business and why? Not just because they have big accounts or their revenue is high. It's really, where do we get our energy from what clients and from what service or product that we do that we could do every day and we're excited to get up in the morning and have these conversations. It definitely was retirement planning. So during the pandemic, we went from a team of 4 to a team of 2, my wife and I. And my wife has a really good expertise in marketing. That's really where her strength is. So we started sitting down while the world and our businesses were on pause and say, okay, if we could paint a picture of what we're going to look like in the future, what are some of the things we want to do to meet new people? And we didn't have that answer yet, but I was a runner. And before the pandemic happened, I was training for a marathon actually, and the month after in April. So I was doing a lot of long runs and listening to a lot of podcasts. And sure enough, MDRT was on my podcast list. And I listened to a podcast by a gentleman named Charlie Redding. And he talked about his retirement practice that he has in the UK. Talked about a book that he wrote, how he does seminars, webinars, and all these great things. when I was on my run, I don't think I've run ever faster to get home. I'm sure my time was significantly quicker because I was excited. That was my aha moment. I said, that's it. That's exactly what I'd love to do. So when I get home, of course, talking a mile a minute to my wife, and she's like, well, like, what's happening? Are you okay? Yeah, slow down. Are you dehydrated? Like, do you need to take a breath? What's going on here? I said, no, I have the idea of how we're going to get in front of more people that we want to have these conversations with. So I shared it and we listened to the podcast again a second time together, took some notes, and that was it. So being a visionary and a quick start, that was about it for me. I came up with the idea, but to get things implemented and started, that's where you lose me. That's not where I'm going to add a lot of value. Luckily, I'm married to this wonderful lady who's also in my business that was able to make all of these things real. So she started researching and found out how to have webinars. And think about it. How were we living? Everybody was sitting at home with a lot of time on their hands, contemplating their life, saying, I love my life. I hate my life. I love my job. I hate my job. There are all these kind of emotions that people were going through. And here we were doing Facebook ads saying, would you like to talk about retirement planning and how that might work for you? And of course, we had a lot of people come into our rooms and we added a lot of value, I think. And when I say value, I think that's important because our purpose was, why we like retirement planning conversations with people is we felt like we were adding a lot of value. We were connecting on a human side to people. It wasn't all about taxation and rates of return. I mean, listen, these things are important. We're financial advisors. That's what we do. It's part of our job. However, that doesn't drive the conversation or build a relationship. So that was a really easy one. And as you can see here, we made a brand because we wanted to be specific. So Retirement by Design became our brand. So now we had a brand. So people that were contacting us knew exactly what we did. We had a webinar, which we had people coming in and we were getting a lot of appointments, probably a little bit too many for us to handle, but that was okay. We had a lot of time on our hands. But I wanted to add a little bit more. Remember that podcast that Charlie did about the book? I said, that's a fun idea. I've always wanted to have a book, write a book, but I'm not a writer. So I thought, who do I know that could collaborate on this project with me? Because again, I just want it to be a simple book to add some credibility, say, hey, we know something about this, and really it was just a lot of the content from our webinars. And I thought about it. My wife said, well, your father writes books, which was true. My father is an author of children's books, and he did that when he started his retirement career. So I called him and he was super excited to embark on this project with me, which is not true at all. It took a lot of convincing and bribery and all these things. I said, I'll come every Christmas and I'll call you once a week and I'll do all these wonderful things. Can we just do this together? But you know what? We look at it now. We talk about it all the time. We had a wonderful experience working together because we really never did that before. So every week I'd be sharing ideas and he'd be asking me questions and he'd be writing some stuff. I'd look it over and I'd say, that's fantastic. Or, maybe we want this to be part of the message. And it was a wonderful experience, a wonderful project to work on. So brand, ideal client, we have the webinar, we have the content. And now when people book an appointment with us, we send them a free copy of our ebook. So there's the credibility. Oftentimes people read a little bit about it and they kind of know what our approach is and what the value add we're going to talk about and the importance of working with an advisor, which is the big message in the book for sure. So that was a lot, but of course I wanted more, right? I still wasn't done yet. I like to talk, that might be my gift. It might be my curse. It depends on who I'm speaking with and what kind of environment I'm in. But I thought it would be really cool to have my own podcast because all I've been doing was going on long runs or commutes and listening to podcasts all the time saying, I can talk, right? I'm talking right now. This is something I think I can do. So I asked my wife, what would it take to have a podcast? She said, well, probably take a mic, some headphones, a little bit of a mixer. I think I can research that. Of course she did. Of course she made it real. And we started the Pursuit of Retirement podcast, which is eventually the same title as my book. So the podcast, I wanted to be a little bit different. I did not want my podcast to be about, again, inflation, rates of return, tax strategies, things like that. Again, important things. I'm not saying as advisors we shouldn't talk about these things. Of course we could. And of course we should. I wanted to highlight community leaders in our community that help people when they retire. And I'll give you some examples of things like that. I had a running coach come on, who was my running coach, and he talked about, how you should start running during retirement. You shouldn't maybe, say, okay, I'm retired and the first month I'm going to run a marathon. If you've never run a marathon before, you should maybe train. You should maybe talk to your doctor. You should get a little bit of more of a process going to get up to that increment of running. We had a nutritionist come in. We had the head of a charity, a local charity, that came in and talked about how does somebody get involved in volunteering during retirement? Because of course, a lot of the conversations we have with people right before retirement, when we ask them, what are you going to do with all this wonderful free time that you're going to create in your life? A lot of people say, I really want to get involved in this charity or this charity. I really want to give back and volunteer. So he came on and he explained, what questions they should be asking the charity, how do you get involved, and all these great things. So it was a wonderful experience. We made a library of professionals that would add value to people's lives when they get to retirement, and not thinking really about a great, opportunity that came out of that was all these people, when we gave them the audio of the podcast to share on their social media, we were getting people from their networks who we never knew that were contacting us and saying, listen to your podcasts. I don't really have an advisor. Maybe we can have a conversation, see if you can help. And of course we can, right? Let's sit down and let's make that happen. So a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun still doing it, of course, right? It's, we've grown bigger than we would have ever anticipated. We're having a lot of fun. I'm working less in my business and I have a bigger team today. We have multiple locations in 2 other cities other than Ottawa now. And we're just having a blast. Everybody is very clear on what our value offer is to our clients. We have a lot of marketing around it. Our pipelines are always full with qualified clients that we think that we can do good things for. And the future is bright and fun.
Wow, what a story and what a transition. The first time that we spoke, I told you, it's never too late to revisit your purpose. And I think in some ways the pandemic really helped you in pivoting. It really gave you that realization. And one of the main takeaways that I got from this is that, it's never too late to start something new. I mean, it sounds so cliche, all right? It sounds so cliche, but you're the epitome of that. You started several things that you were not familiar with, probably at the middle point of your career, and it has been fun for you. It has, I guess, reinvigorated you, sparked new fires in your soul, in your person, and I think now the business is much more fun. Great start to this coffee round the table for this year, gentlemen. That was really perfect. I know that Janet is somewhere out there, but I think the gentlemen, all of us three, would have to do this by ourselves. But going back to Dick, Dick, wonderful presentation. But what's the background to that? How did you start in the industry? What got you into it? We have a lot of, listeners and people who'll be watching here who have been in the business for about a year or so, still probably trying to figure out why in the world am I here? Right? So I think that's a very good starting point as well for our listeners and for those who are viewing us. What got you into this, and how has it been so far when it comes to your career?
It has been, Sean. That was a great story. I'm glad you're doing so well with that. I've got a friend in California that does the Google ads, and it's like he says it's like drinking out of a fire hose. He's got to turn it off because then he has to catch up, and that's a great issue to have in this business. So good luck to you with that. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks, Louis. It's everyone gets in this business differently, and I kind of as you talk to people that you meet at the meetings or colleagues in the business, sometimes it comes up, how'd you get involved in the business? And some are ex-coaches or teachers, or they come from other walks of life. And it was different for me in my case, but it goes way back to when my parents met. And my mom and dad met on a blind date in Denver, Colorado. My dad was in the Air Force at Lowry Air Force Base in Denver. And my mom was working at an office locally, but they were like 18 and 19 years old, and they're 19 and 20, very young. But my dad got orders to ship out just 2 months after they started the date. And so they ran off and got married that night when he got the orders, because girlfriends don't ship out with you, right? Wives ship out with you. And so they found a justice of the peace in this little town in Colorado, Central City, Colorado. And for $3, they got married. And my dad had to borrow the $3 from my mom. So humble beginnings. My dad was my mentor in the business, but I got my dad in the business. And so let me explain. When I was born, my birth announcement appeared in the Cedar Rapids Gazette, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And my mom got a call on the phone. And she said, "Yes, this is Howard Hogan from the Prudential Insurance Company of America. Congratulations on the birth of your son." And she said, "Well, thank you." And he said, "Does he have any brothers and sisters?" She said, "Well, yes, he's got an older sister. She's just about a year older." And so he said, "Well, I'd like to discuss their financial future with you. You know, wouldn't it be a good time, Wednesday?" Or gave her a choice of times. Well, the office my mom had worked in Denver was a Prudential insurance office. And he didn't know that. And so she gave him the appointment. The guy probably fell off his chair. You know, he was prospecting the paper and the birth announcements. And he showed up at the appointed time. My dad was just 3 months out of the service. And he was wearing a new suit and driving a new car, gave a great presentation. They bought a plan from him. And as he's leaving, my dad says, you know, he takes all this in, and he was working at this little Department of Defense contractor in Cedar Rapids by the name of Collins Radio. It became Rockwell Collins. Okay, big Department of Defense contractor. But they had him in this room in the basement welding or soldering, and then no windows. And you know, he'd been in the Air Force. You're outside mostly. You know, you're out working on stuff and going here and there. And so it kind of drove him crazy. And when he saw this Howard Hogan from the Prudential Insurance Company of America in this brand new suit and a new car and a great presentation, "Well, how's a guy get in your business?" He asked him. He said, "Well, I'll have my manager call you." And in 2 months later, he was with a Southern accent in Iowa. You know, now Southern United States, you probably know, have met some people from the south of the U.S. and they have a dialect, and he had that, and he's in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, doesn't know anyone, prospecting out of the phone book. And he's today as a 45-year member of the $1 Million Roundtable. He just turned 90 2 weeks ago, and a 65-year member of NAFA. And so he no longer is taking the CE and all that, but I tease him that I got him in the business, you know, and because of the birth announcement. But you never know. Howard Hogan was simple. He didn't know who needed insurance, so he went to people that had little babies. They need insurance. Okay, that's when simplicity first impacted my life. And he had no idea, and we should never discount what we do. He had no idea he was starting the careers of two people, combined over 100 years in financial services between my father and I. And it was just that last phone call. I don't know if the other people he called that day gave him an appointment, but I'm glad my mom did, because it launched my career and my father's. And you know, so that's why I got interested in simplicity, I think, at a young age. By the time I was in first grade, and I showed this in my presentation in Vancouver, that I wrote on these yellow line pads that you had they were spaced like this for the elementary school kids, you know, where you're starting to write cursive. I don't think they do that anymore, but they teach you how to write. And on one of these yellow line pads, my mom gave it to me. In fact, it's up in my office here. It says, "I want to be an insurance man, Dickie Dobson." I was in the first grade. They asked us, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And so that's a little bit different way that I arrived in the business, because 22 years after that birth announcement, I joined my father's firm and kind of completed that circle. And we sold a lot of the firm just a couple of years ago, RIA firm. We had our own broker dealer we ran. I was the chief compliance officer in. And so we had expanded quite a bit, and probably due to location. I mean, we don't have a big labor pool here, those types of employees. So when a couple of them wanted to retire off, it was time to scale back a little bit. But by that time, I'd written these books, and same, like, it's similar to Sean's situation with COVID, because that's where my books came from. I had always wanted to write it. Well, here's your chance. You've got a lot of time on your hands, and so put that time to good use. And it seems like it's just a distant memory now, but it wasn't that long ago. We were all sitting inside wondering how it was all going to turn out. But so that, simplicity and its impact, and it's not unlike Einstein, but was maybe embraced it. I mean, of the contemporary icons, I think I looked at him first. E equals MC squared. To boil that down to that formula, the theory of relativity. But we have a formula too in our business, and it's P equals 1 over N. And Sean has mastered this, because it's one prospect. How many attempts do you get? One. P prospect equals how many times over N, or once every N time, right? So what's your N is the question. How many attempts does it take you to get one? And Sean found out through the Facebook ads and the process he set up, and the free book. I mean, the whole thing that you described there is perfect for the internet, because they're watching videos you didn't make on Facebook. It's just your ad that they see in the midst of all those and say, "Oh, well, he's not shouting," or that podcast. It seems it's very, very pleasant, and in the midst of all those ads, it's an oasis of sanity. Maybe even looks like, because some of those videos they watch are kind of weird, and you don't control that. All you control is what you put out there. But I love that simplicity of that approach. And it continued with Stephen Jobs. Stephen Jobs, in the biography by Walter Isaacson, Stephen describes how he grew up in this house in Mountain View, California. And the house, it turns out, another gentleman many years before that, 1943, I think it was, Joseph Eichler in California, had an egg business. His family had an egg business, but they lived in a house that was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. A beautiful house in California, designed by, and it was so inspiring to Joseph Eichler that he quit his job and started a construction company to build California modern houses, affordable houses for people, with the floor-to-ceiling windows on slabs with heated floors and beautiful views and vaulted ceilings. It was California Modern was born out of that Frank Lloyd Wright type of prairie school architecture. Well, and it turns out that Stephen Jobs didn't grow up in an original Eichler. It was built on the plans of the same architectural firm, but it wasn't built by Joseph Eichler. His partner, Wozniak, did grow up in an original Eichler, but they called the homes that weren't built by Eichler in California today, they have millions of dollars for these homes. And they call them Leichlers because you can't tell them apart. They look, but it's so inspired Stephen Jobs. And in his book, he describes this almost just like the same effect it had on Joseph Eichler, that he demanded simplicity. He's known for it in his meetings with his employees. He'd coat the walls with their blood till he got simplicity from them. We're not going to go home tonight. We're going to stay and we're going to work. And he says, you have to think hard to get your thinking clean, to make it simple. It's not easy, but once you're there, it's easy to communicate simplicity. And so that's our challenge in our business. So what can we take from the guy who built one of the biggest companies in the world and adopted simplicity as his main thrust? Well, there's got to be something in there for us that we can also improve our businesses by embracing that simplicity. And so I think for me, and that was maybe a long answer to how I got in the business.
Well, very, very informative answer. You are definitely the youngest financial advisor in the world, bar none, right?
At first grade, yeah.
There you go. Here in the country, that's I believe one of the dreams that I personally have for the industry. Somebody coming out of college and they're going to be right off the bat, if they're going to be asked, what do you want to do? What job, what industry do you want to get into? If somebody says, I want to be in financial services, specifically, I want to be a financial advisor, that's a dream. That's a dream right here. So that's a wonderful story to tell. And, I know that our viewers have a lot of questions about that. I apologize, guys. We're gonna have to kind of hold off on those questions. But thanks, Dick, for that story. That was very, very inspiring. Now let's go to Sean. Sean, how did you get into this thing? I know that as Dick mentioned, we have different reasons, different circumstances as to how we got into this industry. What's your story, sir?
All right. And before I share my story, Dick, you're absolutely sorry. You're absolutely right. And thank you for sharing your story. If you mentioned your colleague in California that has to turn off the Google ads. Everybody, when they walk outside of their home, they're checking what the best place for Italian food is, best place to get a haircut. If you don't think that people are looking for an insurance advisor or a retirement planner or a financial planner, you're fooling yourself. You have to be out there. You have to be findable and credible, and you have to have a little bit of content that you're willing to give away so people can get to know you and say, hey, I kind of like that Louis guy. I'm going to give him a call because he seems like a pretty good guy and I'd enjoy having a conversation with him. So I kind of just wanted to add to that because I loved how you said that. And I see so many people in our industry still not out there. So for me, how did I get into the business? Well, my mother and father were both bankers. They were both in financial services. So it was pretty easy for me. Louis, if I asked you, what career do you think I got into? Because my parents were financial advisors, what would you say?
Probably the same thing.
Right? Absolutely not. That's the last thing I ever wanted to do.
Really?
No, I will not do that. I will not be in financial services. Impossible. They used to talk about this stuff, and I thought it was so boring. They talk about the dinner table. It's like, oh my God, I don't care. And that client and this client, and you did this and you did that. It just didn't interest me. So I did something as far away from financial services as I could. I became a funeral director. That's what I went to school for, and that's what I did. I said, financial services, working with people that are maybe not too much talkative anymore, right? That's where the career I went through. However, I feel that when I made the transition to financial services, I was well equipped and well prepared because I was helping people in the worst possible times in their life and I was adding value. I had no idea that's what I was doing back then. I was a funeral director making arrangements, doing embalming, placing flowers, all the things that we had to do. And I loved that career. It was a fantastic career. I really enjoyed helping people, but they finally got to me. And I had to come into financial services at some point, I guess, right? It was just one of those things that, I looked at it. And the way I got into the career was being a funeral director. And again, this is something I know today, but I didn't know back then. I said, you know what? I have a lot of ideas. I kind of want to do my own thing. And, people said, well, you should buy your own funeral home. Well, I was 25 years old when I left being a funeral director, and I looked in my jeans and I didn't have a lot of money in there. Most of it jingled and it was change, and that certainly wasn't enough to buy a funeral home. So I said, well, what other things are out there? And then I was just going through the newspaper, looking at different job ads. And there was this blind ad on monster.ca that came in, and it was be your own boss, flexible hours, and unlimited income. It's like, wow, check, check, check. What is this? This is strange. Curious enough, I called the number, made an interview, and it was actually Clarica is the company, was one of our biggest companies in Canada, which was purchased by Sun Life a couple of years after I had joined them. So huge company, knew you know exactly what I was getting into. I went and met the sales manager. He had a wonderful presentation. If you sell this many policies, you know, and this is the average premium at the end of the year, this is what it would be. And I said, that's great. That's about double what I make as a funeral director. So I think you're full of beans. I don't believe what you're saying. Like, how can I do that? I've never done this before. He said, if you want to try, just listen to what I say and you'll be happy at the end of the year. So I'll give you a year. That's probably it. I kept on saying, you know, I'll just be in this business for a year. Maybe I'll make my parents happy, and then I'll go do something else after. Sure enough, I made almost to the penny what he did in that presentation with me during that first interview. And it was all about activity, just making sure that I had a lot of activity. That part I didn't understand though during the interview. What happened was I started my first day and there was another sales manager that was brand new. And he said, okay, we're going to start a call night tonight. We're going to do some calls. I said, perfect. Give me the list. Tell me what to say. She said, oh, there's no lists. You're supposed to do this project 100. And I said, yeah, I don't know if I did it like the way I was supposed to. And you're going to call those people. I said, well, I don't have that. He says, well, I got something for you. I got a list. I said, okay, perfect. He's going to give me a list. White pages. Here's the phone book. Well, okay, that's going to be kind of hard. I said, where should I start? He said, there's a lot of names in there. You start wherever you'd like. So, okay, perfect. So I'm flipping through it, and then while I'm flipping through it, I look for my last name, see if there are people in the phone book that had my last name. Sure enough, there were. There was about 3 pages of them. So I'd call and I'd say, hey, this is Sean Belfay calling from Clarica. And a lot of people start, wait, what did you say your name is? Sean Belfay? That's my last name. You got to be kidding me, right? Maybe we're related, right? So there's a little bit of an icebreaker there. And from there, made a couple appointments and just kind of took off from there. So my path was pretty much like everybody else in financial services. It's a calling. I think it's something that at some point you get into it. And I always tell people where I really became a financial advisor in the insurance industry was the day that I delivered a check for a death benefit to somebody that I had sold a policy to. That was the actual real day that I entered the business, and I actually understood what I did and the difference and the impact that I'm making on people's lives and how important it is to not let people off the hook and to keep on following up with them and making sure that this is important. It might not be right timing, but let's do something. Let's do something for your family. So that's my path, Louis.
Wonderful. I just can't believe how the ads have not changed over the past 20 or something years for attracting talent into the business. Those are the same exact words that I see on Facebook, on Instagram when they're trying to attract talent, you know. Be your own boss. It worked, still does. But what a wonderful story because, you know, if I may say this, Sean, that's literally cradle to the grave when it comes to your career. And you've come full circle because after experiencing everything that you need to experience in the funeral industry, now you know how important it is to prepare people for, I guess, that end. And I
Sure.
think that gave so much value to you as a person and made you really pursue financial advising as something that you can do for the rest of your life. So that's a wonderful story. That's tremendous. Boy, Janet, these guests that we have today, they're top tier, really. And the stories that they have on the side, absolutely wonderful.
You are right, Louis, and I apologize for kind of dropping off the video call a while ago, but I'm back. And I've heard a lot of what you shared. Thank you, gentlemen. I guess right now we'll start with our Q&A, right, Louis?
Yes, we will. We'll get right into it. So if everybody's wondering why we're starting with the Q&A just now, probably you're thinking, oh, haven't we started yet? Well, that's just a preamble to everything. So we have a few questions for our distinguished guests this morning, and I'm going to throw it back to Dick. Okay, so Dick, earlier in this Zoom meeting, you shared the yardstick presentation, which is a very simple yet powerful presentation that a lot of people can learn from. We know that you've been doing this for so many years now. But just a curious question. Has anyone said no to you after doing that presentation? And
Uh,
if somebody was, brave enough to say no to you, how did you respond? What was your rebuttal to that?
if they said no, I didn't hear them. I get real hard to hear when that comes up. You just keep blowing right on through. Well, here's my next one, and we got this bottle of ketchup and a bottle of hot sauce we're talking about. So, and you just keep going. No, all kidding aside, and it's a great question because that's part of what we do. And, if your P equals 1 over N, for instance, if it's 2 over 10, if I get a sale twice every 10 attempts, and I make $1,000 on that sale, then each no is worth $100, right? And so when they say no, you got to say thanks for the 100, on to the next one. And that's the way it works. And because the no can't stop you. If the no stops you, you're in the wrong business. Okay, because you have to keep going beyond that. But yes, people say no a lot. Yeah. But I know, like the tuna fish example too. The tuna fish example is about volatility. The ketchup and the hot sauce is about investment risk. And so people get all nervous and they start wringing their hands when they know you're going to ask them for a decision, right? Because it's time for them you've made your presentation. Now it's time to make a decision. You got to take them off the hook. Especially when it comes to investment risk, because they think, well, could I lose all my money? Clients will ask that. Well, it's possible, right?
It is.
But owners don't, over the period of time, if they have a commitment to it, their core assets have to be in equities, or they're going to lose out to inflation, right? If you can't keep up, you're going to lose purchasing power. You might as well spend it now, because you're going to buy more now than it will later. And so, of course, we have to have that reserve set aside for when our bodies wear out and we can no longer work. And then our money has to work for us. And that's the basis of all that we do. We live within our means, saving some for the future. And I did a presentation on this in Atlanta 14 years ago at the MDRT annual meeting. And it was about the history of money. It goes back 11,500 years ago. The scientists find this hut in the Jordan Valley, and there's evidence that it was a grain storage. It had elevated floors to keep the grain off the ground, and it was completely mudded in to keep rodents away. They were protecting what they couldn't use today so that they could use it tomorrow. This was the thought inspired by Lorenzo de' Tonti when he created the tontine that became the bonds of Venice. There are the financial instruments that we use today have some humble beginnings. But today we lay off all these risks on these products that have been refined since 1400s. And the bonds of Venice were the first ones issued, and they built and they paid them, and it worked. And so that model is basically what we use today for bonds. And equities was the Dutch East India Company. That's where we get in Netherlands and into London with the stock exchanges, but the ability to own a business. And if you think about all the people as you drive to work and you see the big homes and the fancy cars, those probably aren't people that are renting their time to others. Those are people that own businesses. And so our clients need to learn from that. If we're going to be successful, we must own businesses with our core assets. Not all of them, because we have insurance that we need. We have the disability income. There's critical illness insurance. Those certainly have to be taken care of. But if we can get our clients to smile through this process, that's my 3 rules. We got to keep it simple, make it memorable, and have fun with it. And so if we can get a smile, we're halfway done with the client. And we've got that connection, and we're having a laugh about this ketchup we're talking about. What's my investment guy doing talking about ketchup? I'm getting kind of hungry. Is it lunchtime? That's kind of what you go on. But with risk, can I do this? I got another one.
Sure, go ahead.
This, ketchup represents large caps, large companies, right?
Yes.
Procter & Gamble, Ford Motor Company, General Motors. These are big companies. They're not going to go out of business. They're going to pay next month's dividend, next quarter's dividend. They might not always be on that track to the stars, but they're always going to be here. Okay, and most people can have ketchup, right? Some people like ketchup on their ketchup. You know these people.
Yes.
Now, hot sauce is a different matter. If we were to have the same proportion of this is Tabasco sauce as we were to use ketchup, we'd be in for some issues, right? And so our clients, these are the small companies, these are the emerging markets, these are the sectors, the cyber currency, right? A little bit goes a long way. Clients get this. We don't have to talk about standard deviations. We don't have to talk about betas or correlation coefficients. We lose them. Those are great conversations to have with, I don't know, your professor from college. Who wants to talk about that stuff? The CFAs do, not CFPs, right? Not that they're bad people. I know a lot of great people, CFAs, and I'm kidding from a professional standpoint to a certain extent, because the client gets. If they don't get this, put a little of this hot sauce on their tongue, they'll get it.
That's
right?
right.
But this is investment risk. We manage this. We're investment advisors. Most of us, we manage investment risk on behalf of our clients. We charge a fee to do that, right? And we manage their accounts. There's one part of what we do that the clients need to know about that we can't manage, and it can run them out of the market. So if they understand the difference between risk and volatility, because volatility is not investment risk. That's when the market goes up or down by 7, 8, 900 points in a day, and no one knows why, or they point to lots of things that they think they know why. And the clients, that's like the top of the roller coaster, That's a little hard on the heart for some of our folks. They have to hear it from us before it happens on how to behave once it happens. And that's our task. And I like to use tuna fish for that. Okay. And so this is a can of tuna fish, this is yellowfin tuna. This is about $2.50 at the store, American. Now, suppose you went into the store a month later and it said tuna fish, $8 a can. Well, that's quite a bit more expensive. As a consumer, how do you respond to that? You're probably thinking chicken, right? Or tofu or something. But that's too expensive. And now, if you went in the next week and it said tuna fish, 3 cans for $1, well, they've changed the deal. If the date's good and you like tuna fish, time to stock up. Who wouldn't? That's a great deal, right? Well, I showed the ticker tape on my presentation, my ticker tape on the slide. I say, folks, it's all tuna fish. Why do we feel good about $8 a can? And it's, showing the stock prices, and we won't touch it when it's 3 for $1. I'm simply reframing it. But this is something as advisors, we don't manage volatility. We can only take advantage of volatility. We can't manage it. But we can set the client's mind straight on how to behave when it happens. And we are behavioral scientists. We manage not investments, people's behavior on how they respond to what happens to those investments, right? So there's just a couple more. So they're a lot of fun to do. Yeah.
Why do I get the feeling that most of your meetings are either scheduled during lunch or dinner, Dick?
I was going to say the same thing.
Right? Drives home the point much faster.
The book is Make Simplicity Your Superpower. But I've had people that said it should be Make Simplicity Your Supermarket. You got the ketchup, you got the tuna fish, you got the what?
There you go. Instead of coming up with the elevator pitch, you got the supermarket pitch.
That's right. Let's be a little bit more specific. Must be Costco, right? So Well, that was wonderful, Dick. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, Sean, I know that you've encountered so many challenges, in the course of transitioning. But I believe everybody here is really curious. You know, there has to be some fallout when it comes to, the amount of business that you were supposed to be taking in because of that shift from a more generalist perspective to a more specialized way of conducting your business. How did you manage that? And once you pivoted, I guess this is the follow-up question to that. Once you pivoted and once you got comfortable with it, you know, what were your presentations like now? Okay, how did it look like? How did it, make your clients feel? What was the thought process? What was the framework behind?
Yeah,
I
no,
know
great
that's
question.
I know that's a loaded question, but you have to try.
Yeah, sure, appreciate it. I got a tough one. Thank you. So definitely I was afraid of a fallout, right? Because I was shifting everything. But anything that I believe in doing, if I'm going to do it, I need to be committed 100%. And I was committed to this shift. So I was willing to accept a temporary decline in business because I knew over the long term, we would be creating a more efficient business. We'd be expressing our value more meaningfully and easier. And we'd be happier as a team as well, too, because we're talking about a service that we're really passionate about, that we love having conversations about. So really, there was no fallout. Right from our first ever webinar that we ever did, we got 2 booked appointments and we sold the first person that we met with. Now, was it all like that? Of course not, right? We'd have some weeks where we'd have some dud appointments and, they weren't so qualified and we kind of made some tinkering with regards to that. But, it gave us the confidence right away. And we had goals, right? We went into every webinar believing that what we're talking about is good for a certain amount of people. And those people are going to be on this webinar. So it's a whole mindset thing, Louis, right? We're big in mindset in our business, thinking that, that person is going to be out there. They're going to like what we hear, what they're hearing, but it's not going to be for everybody. And that's okay. It's about timing. In our webinars, we have interactive polls. So we're keeping people engaged. We're getting data and information from these people as well, too. Some of the questions are, do you have a written retirement plan? Right, 97% of the thousands of people that have been through our webinars, no, right? And that's part of our presentation because we talk about 14% of Canadians actually have a written retirement plan. But all of these Canadians, when they go on vacation, they plan the heck out of their vacation. They know where they're going to stay, where the best restaurants are, when the museum opens, and all these great activities. So we can plan, but why are we not planning for retirement? Because most people are afraid of the results. And I really believe that with proper conversation and planning towards getting to their objective and helping them achieve their goals is not for everybody. Some people don't like to be accountable for different results, and that's okay. We can't be everything to everybody. So we're very fortunate. There was no fallout. We built a very efficient business, and we were able to, over the last couple of years, sell off our non-fit clients to other advisors who wanted to be those generalists. So we made our practice a lot more focused and very contrary. Because some people, when we talk about ideal client, some people might say, I work with doctors. I work with business owners. I work with accountants, and those are all great. We have all of those clients in our book of business. Our ideal client is not a client, it's a service that we offer to people that are 5 years away from retirement and they're not sure where they're going or if they're going to be able to get there. That's our bread and butter. That's our wheelhouse that we call it. And we love having those conversations with those people. I forget the second part of your question, Louis. You're gonna have to remind me.
No, the second part is now that you've, kind of transitioned already, if I were your client and I'm sitting in front of you, you know, how's the conversation going to be like? Let's just say that I'm 10 years away from retirement. I really dread going to work every day, so I'm looking forward to the longest vacation that I'm ever going to have. So how does that now look like from being, from doing that shift? I'm just very interested in on what the kind of framework you have when it comes to those conversations.
Right. We become psychologists for a lot of people, right? Where we're able to kind of help them think. And we use a lot of thinking tools with our clients. One big one we use with every client, and we talk about this every annual meeting, is it's a strategic coach tool. It's called the DOS. And we talk about what people's dangers are right now. And that could be, and people might say, well, what do you mean a danger? Well, what are you talking about? Is it what keeps you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? What are you afraid of? What's something that could happen that people typically think, well, I'm not going to have enough money, or I'm going to run out of money, or I'm going to get sick, or my spouse is going to die, or one of my children. So we're able to gather a lot of information by doing that. The next part of DOS, so it's DOS. O is opportunities, right? So what's the one thing that wakes you up in the middle of the night at 3 in the morning that you're excited about? Right? They say, man, I really wish I could do this. I really wish I could change my job because I really wish that I could buy an income property or buy a cottage or spend my winters in Florida because it's so cold in the winter in Ottawa that I want to be in Florida during, or maybe California, Richard, right? It's just a little bit farther for us. So that's the opportunity side. And then strengths. We want people to be empowered about, hey, I know you're thinking it's just about dangers and opportunities, but you have a lot of really good things going on in your life right now. Like you might have your house and it's paid for. What a strength. What an awesome, thing that you've done. You have a defined benefit pension plan. You're going to have cash for life when you retire. And if you live to 105, that's going to come in every month and pay you and index to inflation. That's a wonderful strength to have. So we talk about these things with our clients, and it gives us all the details that we need so we can come back to them and help them find solutions for the things that are important to them. And without fail, people say, you really listen to me. You're really different than our advisor, let's say at the bank that we're dealing with, because all he or she used to do was say, well, here's your rates of return, here's your statements. And they'd be thinking, well, I looked at that online before coming to see you. That's not adding a lot of value, right? But we learned how to do this because we listened and we asked our clients. We sent out surveys. I had a client meeting where I had a little group of clients, and we changed those clients every year. We called them our client board of directors, and we showed them our presentations. We said, what do you like? What don't you like? What are we missing? What can we get rid of? So we did a lot of research to make sure that we were doing what's important to them, not what we think is important to us, but what's important to them.
It's literally humanizing the entire process. We get a lot of feedback also from clients here in Manila, here in the Philippines, wherein they get offered by something by the banks where they're depositing money into, and then before they get out, of course, these banks would be like, you know wouldn't let them out because they have to sit and listen to a presentation. And then at the end of the day, they're not really happy with it. And I think what we do as financial advisors is that by humanizing the entire process, we build that strong relationship, that strong bond with our clients. And that's an art and science that each and every financial advisor should learn. It's not about a one-time transaction. It's not about, getting the second one once a baby is born. It's really the entire journey. And you gentlemen, you are the epitome of this kind of advisor. And there's really a lot of things that we're learning right now. I have like notes in my notepad as I'm, doing all of these things. I'm hosting and I'm, taking care of the back room. But these are really nuggets, and I do hope our viewers are picking up on a lot of stuff. Now, this is a curveball question. It's not in the list that we sent you beforehand, but it's going to be fun. And I do hope that Janet will allow me to do this. She doesn't have a choice anyway. But
Go ahead.
here's a curveball question for you, and probably you don't get this a lot. Um, Please think of the most complicated situation or client that you've ever discussed, these things about. Now, kindly paint us a picture of how that situation was and how you were able to add value to that client. I'm pretty sure that we have stories ourselves. We have that one person that we always go back to. And, please share that with us because, there's so much learning to be had from that. Let's start with you, Dick.
Yeah, and this actually came from MDRT as well. And it was a individual that came to me because he knew I had some expertise in an area that he didn't have that much experience in. And he brought me in on a case from an individual who had been a Bernie Madoff victim. And this gentleman was a physician, retired physician, um, and had been receiving income from Madoff. And so once that all blew up, he was subject to clawback. And that means he had to pay back in money that they had been paying him for his retirement. And so, well, wow, what are you getting me into here? you know, but it turned out wonderfully because, and he needed us very badly in that moment. And so I don't know, it's kind of like when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? And so we had a long conversation about it, and he had to pay all this money. He had the money to pay back. And so he did. And then what our next move was to refile all his taxes because he had been claiming as taxable income the money that was turned out to be phantom income, right? And so he got a $250,000 tax refund from that. We worked with him and his accountant and got all this done, and he invested that refund then right away when he got it. Um, Longtime client of mine, he just turned 86, and I used one of Mike Morrow's. Mike from MDRT, Mike Morrow. He's a Canadian, sure. Mike's in Thunder Bay. Got a great idea about sending your clients this original newspaper on their birthday from the day they were born, right? And I did that. You just this last week, and he called it. It was touching. He said, "Oh, it's such a wonderful gift," and he's in an assisted living center, so I'm sure he shared that with every one of his friends there at the center. But that particular one seemed like a turning point for me because he got harmed by someone in the financial business, but he also resolved his issues with people from the financial business. And it reminded me of a story that I heard a long time ago, and it seems like maybe it was Brian Heckard, but I had a client that said, "Oh, I don't want anything to do with that because they'd had a bad experience with a financial advisor." And the advice from the MDRT member was, "Well, ask them if they've ever had a pair of shoes that didn't fit right." They didn't quit wearing shoes. They just had the wrong pair. And so that individual had the wrong advisor, and they found the right advisor, and the fit was better and the comfort's there. And so that's an important thing. And I'm not sure that I have another more interesting client, although everyone's different. And interesting in their own right. But to me, that seems like the person I helped the most, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a very good example. I mean,
I love what you said about, well, Brian said about the shoes. First time I've heard that. And to add to that, I guess we just have to keep trying as clients, right? If you did not find the right professional to help you, you just have to keep looking for the right person.
and
Yeah.
it was a lesson also in client servicing, right? I mean, an original newspaper, date of birth. That's a very good idea for
It's
Very
a
for
great
everybody listening.
idea for Mike. That was a great idea for Mike. And in a nice presentation box, it's about $100. But obviously he's got millions invested with it. So, that's not the point. The point is I wanted to have an effect. And
That's
the
right.
the desired effect was there. Plus, I like him. I mean, we've got this 20-year relationship. I guess about 20 years ago, Madoff and all that blew up. But it and Curtis Cloak, I think Curtis. Perhaps I know Janet probably knows Curtis, and Curtis has a great presentation where he says some people are so poor, all they have is money, and it drives home the point that it's not about the money. It's about the peace of mind. that they get from having the money. If it's concern and worry and for him, his experience with Madoff was concern and worry. It was the hand wringing. What are we going to do? How did I get into this mess? But what it should be is to give that level of comfort. And that's, if you're not getting that level of comfort from your planning process, then maybe that's the wrong pair of shoes, right? And go try a better pair of shoes on, and you just don't have the right fit.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're in the business of really giving people peace of mind. That's a wonderful line. That's the wonderful thing about conversations like this is that it really helps us, especially me. I mean, I'm on the 8th year of my business, of my practice in the industry. It gives so much depth to what we can do, and how positively we can impact the lives of the people that we speak with. I mean, we're a country of about 112 million, all right, for a small archipelago. But the level of financial knowledge that people here have is nowhere near, probably the level of knowledge people have in the United States or in Canada. Going back to Sean mentioned 14% of people in Canada have a retirement plan. But the question there is, how serious is that financial plan? How detailed is it compared to them, planning for their vacation? So, going back to you, Sean, do you have that person in mind? Do you have that one person that you always cycle back to when it comes to the toughest moments in your career? How was that, and how were you able to turn it around?
For sure. I thought of that person right away when you asked that question. It was a former financial advisor, and great person. He's a wonderful client, and I think we get along really well now, but we didn't at the start because my style, as I mentioned a couple times during my presentation tonight, is not about rates of return and taxes and inflation, but his really was. When he met with his clients, he would have to the penny what the return percentage and dollar figure was since their last meeting, and he'd have all this written out for them in all this detail. And I worked with him a little bit at the start before I took over his business. And, at the point, maybe because I didn't want to lose the opportunity to buy his business, I never told him, like, people don't care. Like, you're doing all this for nothing, but I finally had that conversation with him after because he was driving me crazy. The amount of detail and what he was looking for us, at one point I just said, is that what you're really looking for? Is that just really what you're accustomed to look for? And he said, well, what do you mean? And we had a conversation. I said, if I get all this information for you, what difference is that going to make in your life? And is that really helping you? Or is there something else that we could be doing and using our time a little bit more wisely? And when I had that conversation with him, and he was driving not only me crazy, but my staff crazy, because he was one of those old time advisors that didn't have an assistant, did all the paperwork, wrote it in perfectly, beautiful handwriting. You couldn't even read my handwriting if you tried to. They say doctors have bad handwriting. I beat every doctor in this world handwriting wise. There's nothing you can read from my handwriting. But if there was ever anything missing in the paperwork, like my staff would be super, super nervous filling out paperwork for transactions, his personal transactions. So when we finally were able to have that conversation, he looked at me and he said, I just want to make sure that you'll take care of my wife if something happens to me. Right? And I said, we're getting somewhere. Tell me more about that. How can I help her? And then he took out this binder and I said, I'm going to scan all that. I'm not going to keep a binder in my office, but thank you for showing me that. And he just went through what his wishes were. Since then, we've set up a lot of really cool things. He's actually done a video for his children and grandchildren that will present to them when on his passing. He has a letter written out to them about wishes or how we just really turned it from things. And when I think about these things, it makes me emotional because I look at back what we used to talk about was nonsense. There was no value being added. There was nothing important, but he thought it was because this is what he did his whole career. And he thought that the clients liked that. He did really well as an advisor. And I tell him now, all that stuff that you did, it's not because you did that because they liked you and trusted you. That's the only reason why. It's not because he had the best returns in town. because the products we sell, the investments we sell, you can get them anywhere else outside these four walls. They're not exclusive to us, right? They just liked you and they trusted you. And if you got to know them a little bit better, you maybe would have stuck around the financial service business because he was burnt out at the end. He just did not like it anymore because it was just always keeping up. And now he's a wonderful friend. We talk all the time. And he's one of our biggest referrers, as you can imagine, into our business because of that relationship that we built on the human side. As you eloquently said a little bit back, Louis, it's about humanizing our conversations.
That gave me the goosebumps. The moment that you mentioned that, you were able to change the mindset, and it's not just the mindset, it's really changing how he felt about everything. He's been doing that for such a long time in his career, in his business, and when you took over some of the business that he had, or everything that he had when it comes to the business, that's the time that he started, I guess, knowing for a full fact that, hey, this is not how it's supposed to be. And you being the person right there and then to make him realize that that is truly empowering for you. It really kind of gives you more motivation to help out a former advisor. I mean, can you believe that? A former advisor being helped out by an advisor. Such a wonderful sharing. Gentlemen, we're almost at the end, unfortunately. But we want to thank you once again for taking time out of your Friday evening there in the United States and Canada for being with us. But I guess it's now time to go to some of the questions, or the question that we have in the chat room. And it's a question from Julianne. I do believe the question is for Sean. But Dick, I think you can also take a crack at this after Sean has his turn. The question is, the industry known for utilizing FB ads is e-commerce. They have a concept called winning creatives or winning products. In our industry, what type of ad creative do you put out there? And which ones have worked for you? Oh, I know that there's a lot of trial and error. I think I remember you telling me it took you like a couple of years to really fine tune everything. So, but for the sake of our listeners and our viewers, Sean, please share, your answer to this question.
Great question. I love that question because I'm very passionate talking about our Facebook ads. I'm very proud of what we do and how we kind of created them. So trial and error, first of all, you're exactly right. The biggest tips that we learned along the way, your sound has to be awesome, right? So make sure you can be heard, none of this background noise and all that stuff. So you have to have it professionally done, or at least have professional equipment. I don't think professionally done is necessary as per se anymore, but you need professional equipment, which is very accessible and inexpensive today. But we did beta testing, Julie. So, the one that worked the most for us after doing kind of different angles and different conversations was a conversation with the people. And what I did was I gave them three things that are going on in our world right now, specifically in Canada. First thing was our old age security pension plan. And this is paid out to people at when they turn 65 years old in our country. But this plan was established in the 1920s for when people lived until 66 years old. Now they're living till about 95, right? So you talk about that and you say, could that be a problem? Perhaps, right? Then we talk about things like demographics. So the largest wave of people that are going to be retired in the history of our country is happening right now, right? And there's going to be a lot of things that are going to affect you individually because of that, right? Whether it's healthcare, whether it's jobs, your kids, and we're seeing it right now in our country. It's crazy. Will your kids be able to buy their first home, or is it going to be too expensive to do that, right? So we talk about all this stuff, and it's like, is that going to be a problem, right? And then we talk about estate planning. Our country here in Canada, if you die with more than $220,000 in your estate, which is not a big number when you talk about all your taxable assets, that next dollar is going to be at 53% taxation. And then you have a provincial tax of 1.5%. A lot of people don't know this. I see your faces right now. You say, why do you live in Canada? Because I'm Canadian, right? That's why. But Is that going to be a problem for you? So we talk about those three things, and it's an ad where I just kind of talk about that. And then I say, if these things are of concern to you or if they're new information, join us for our next webinar. And then we have the different dates. So then we get into the little bit of information. So we try to give 3 points that are going to affect people and say, hey, I better do something about this. This guy might give me some solutions about that. And that's the one that works the best, works the most, is give them a little bit of information, disturb them a little bit, and then bring them in to add some value.
That's a wonderful carrot, killing them with the facts and then drawing them in, right?
Right.
Well, Dick, how about in your practice? I know that it's a different practice from what Sean has been doing, but how you put yourself out there? I know that you've been in the industry for so long with so much success. It's a business that that was started by your dad, but how do you still make sure that you're relevant? I think that's the proper question when it comes to the type of practice that you're conducting right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a conservation mode. I'm managing a book. And when you manage a book, a business that I've had for a long time, I'm not seeking new clients. And I'm fortunate that I'm in a position like that. But I try to do that each and every day a little bit. And if I get a referral, that would be the only way I would work with anyone from an existing client. So I'm probably in a little bit different position than a lot of our listeners, certainly. But got in the business in 1980, in June.
All right.
1980. Yeah. So yeah, it's not like digging ditches. I'm looking forward to my next 40 years too.
And as with everybody here, we look forward to having the same type of success that these two wonderful gentlemen have had in their careers, continue to have in their careers. But just like with a lot of good things, things have to come to an end. And with that, I think I would love to say that Sean and Dick, thank you for adding great value to our Saturday morning. Lots of nuggets of wisdom, of knowledge that we've picked up from this round of coffee around the table. So I do believe last words have to come from Janet. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Sean and Dick. Wonderful, wonderful conversation we had. And I'm pretty sure I've already received a lot of DMs asking for the recording of this discussion. It will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, and I will be sharing the link to our social media platforms. Actually, Coffee Around the Table started at the height of the pandemic. I guess at that time, Louie and I were getting bored, and we needed to spice up what we were actually already doing at home, since everybody is on lockdown. And we thought, what better way to not only contribute but add spice, to the industry by getting people together and learning from them and learning from each other. And I truly believe that is what MDRT is all about. I've been a member for, I forgot.
She lost count.
15 years. Well, not as long as Dick or Sean, but, I have learned a lot from members like you, from very dear friends. And that is what we are doing here in Coffee Round the Table. So please watch out for the uploaded video very, very soon. So thank you very much again, Louie.
You are most welcome. See you same time next year.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.